LS salt. LS salt. Or some people call it LS salt as an ELIS salt. Basically, LS salt was salt that was actually made. Like I said, my Titanic made quite a bit of money. My LS Titanic, and there was also an LC Titanic. But basically, they made quite a bit of money. And they also, like I said, we used the salt. The salt would be sucked in. I mean, the salt water would be sucked in, and it would go through one steam engine or two steam engines. And the salt would be kept inside of the steam vessel, basically. I think that's might be why the steam vessels were so big, is basically they would bring in the salt water and basically vaporize it, and the salt would go up. I mean, the salt would stay in the steam vessel and would build up. And about midway through or at the end of the journey, they would scrape out the salt. And they'd put it in bags. And then they would sell it. And believe it or not, like I say, steam salt is actually a lot different than normal salt because I use big cast iron or big iron. I think I did use cast iron steam vessels, but I also used iron steam vessels. But basically, the metal, some of the particles or some of the metal would actually get leached into the salt. Apparently, when you heat up salt up to thousands of degrees or whatever, when it gets all nice and boiling and it's boiling around and twirling around those great big steam vessels, basically some of the minerals or whatever, or the minerals in the water or something, the salt would bind to those minerals somewhat, and even or the minerals in the or the mineral transfer from the walls of the steam vessel, which would basically make salt with iron in it. The salt always had a little bit of iron from either from the water or from the side of the vessel, side of the steam vessel. But basically, my steam vessels were made of iron, so some of those particles would get out, or some of the particles in the water, and the salt would go clunk around it. But basically, it meant that LS salt, people. There was normal sea salt that people could get, and there's even dried sea salt and all that other stuff, but it wasn't the same as LS salt, which had iron in it. Now, I didn't realize this at the time, and people would just come and be like, I don't know why, but we like your salt best. Like people would come and buy my salt from my ships, because they'd be like, we want to get some more of that salt. Yeah, we'll buy it. Because there were other people getting salt from other sources, but my salt, my steam salt, was actually best, LS. And people didn't really know why. They just felt better. They just thought that they just felt better. And like I say, I don't know. I mean, like I say, I just owned the ship, and basically at the end of the voyage, I would have all this salt built up inside my steam vessels, and they would have to rake it out, and I had to pay people to rake it out, and they'd have these long poles with these little tritty things that would go in there, and it's kind of hard to get out too. It's scraping. And it would take like about a day or something like that. And there was a system actually in the Titanic where you could shut off one that was full, and then scrape out the salt, and then shut off the next one that's full and scrape out the salt. Because usually we'd sell the salt when we got into port. When we got into port, LS would go, and they'd offload the bags, and people would be like, I'm at 40! I'm at 50! Like outside the Titanic, there was like this little bidding place, because pretty much, because my ships, they carried passengers and cargo. And I sold the salt from the engines. And there was also all my steamers did that. LS salt, basically. And I made a pretty good penny from that. Like I said, the LS ships never needed anything when they came into port. From the salt sales alone, they had quite a bit of money. Not to mention there was also other sales as well. But my shipping fleet, LS ships, was basically like a country on the sea, or unto itself. We sold the salt from the steam vessels, and also sold. We didn't even need to have mining facilities, but we did, and farms as well. Like we grew our own food. LS Titanic, or LS the LS shipping port, and an LC shipping port, or manufacturing ports in Belfast. They grew their own food. They made their own food. Everything. We used the steam engines to. We had steam engines set up on all our farms, so we could just run out a line, run out a rope, dig it in, and go and pull a plow, no problem. We even put in pipelines so we could just go done. Anyway, I did that first because I had all this steel and all these people, and the people would tend to the farm and stuff like that. But basically, LS was a country unto itself in Belfast and other places. Basically, we did our own mining. We mined our own. We were Irish. We were German, and we were other people that just didn't want to be pushed around, and a lot of women that also, like I said, women would flock to my country because they didn't want to be raped. Like I said, in the olden days, you know what they used to use pillows for? A pillow. I mean, a bed. Most people just put some clothes or something, but people would have these pillows, and they would take a girl up to their bedroom, and basically they would take her and then they would shove her head into the pillow, and she'd be like, oh, can't breathe, and then they would rip off her clothes or whatever, and then what the guys would do is they would shove it in as hard and as deep as they could possibly get it. Yeah, and a guy was, and guys were even boasted about how wide they could split a girl open. Like, yeah, I split her all the way open, or not all the way open, but I mean, I split her. They would say I split her, whatever. And what they're saying about this was basically they had split a 6-year-old girl vagina open, basically, to make it fit. And these are like 20-year-old guys and 40-year-old men, mostly black and mostly zombie way, like I say. They would boast about how wide they could split a 6-year-old girl. Anyway, like I say, Harlem and Wolf was a small little. He had a bunch of black people, and they would scrape the sides of the barnacles off the Harlem and Wolf yard. It was basically just a barnacle repair shop, and the black people would repair wooden ships and stuff like that at the Harlem and Wolf yard. Just and put some paint on there, or some tar, or whatever they could possibly find. Sometimes they put newspaper up on ships to repair them. And then they would send them out. Like I say, the black people, they really had no honor or dignity. They would just, sometimes if a wooden ship came in with a hole, they would stuff newspaper or blocks of wood or just dirt. They would even stuff dirt inside the hole. And then they would paint it over. And they'd be like, "Whoop, your repairs are done, sir." Yes. And then all repairs are final, apparently. So if you went to the Harlem and Wolf yard, which was the black yard, like I said, over there, women didn't go over there because the Harlem and Wolf yard was like rape city, basically. There were no women on the yard, and if a woman did go on the yard, she was raped immediately. LS Shipyard, which was the Belfast shipyard, which was the biggest shipyard in the port. My shipyard with steam stuff. I had women and men and all kinds of different people working on my yard. And one day the Harlem and Wolf boys came over and basically to see the competition. And they saw a girl and they raped her. I think it was the daughter or the wife of one of the foremen or whatever. And they basically shot anyone that came near, pretty much. Anyway, though, the Irish returned fire and I think the girl got killed. And basically, as the car was driving away, they were still shooting at the driver. And I think they hit the driver in the head or something like that. And a good shot, Irish. I think a German might have actually come out with his gun. Like I said, when a German appeared on the site, something was going to die. Germans were really good shots and had the really good guns, and they could just like. And I think it was actually some said it was the German that actually got him in the head. They got the guy in the head. Basically, 12 of his boys, his Harlem boys, or Harlem boys, got taken out that day, or 4 of them, basically. One of them got in the car and was just trying to start it or drive it away. There's like 3 cars or whatever. One of them did get away. Anyway, they all died, basically, pretty much. And except for one or something like that, hop defense or something. I don't really know. Anyway, though, this is what happened at the LS shipyard, pretty much. And then they came back a couple days later with Tommy, with Klashnikov or something like that, and basically they shot up the yard.